I am standing on this old wooden step stool in the upper hallway, and the air up here feels as heavy and still as a wet wool blanket. The thermometer on the wall says 84 degrees, yet even with this window pulled wide, there is not a lick of movement. I am taking a 6-inch length of Esther's white sewing thread and taping it to the very top of the window frame. It hangs there perfectly vertical, as motionless as a plumb line. This lack of a breeze is why many folks fail at cooling their homes. They open every sash they have, which only invites the outdoor heat to settle in. To fix this, we use the shaded intake passive draw. I am going to step down now and walk to the north side of the house, down near the summer kitchen. This side has been sitting in the deep shade of the maples since sunrise, and the stone foundation feels like lake water against the back of my hand. I reach for the sash of this lower window, and as soon as the latch clicks and I slide it up, there is a soft, hollow huff. If we look back up the stairs at that thread now, it has snapped outward against the screen. It is dancing in a steady flow of air. We did not wait for a breeze to find us. We used the weight of the air to build a pressure path. Within the next few minutes, I will show you how to use the stack effect to flush the warmth out of your rooms without a single watt of electricity. It is a matter of identifying your specific exhaust and intake points. However, we must be honest about the weather. If the air outside your shaded side is warmer than the air inside your house, you are just importing a fever. We will look at why the height of a window matters more than its width, how to use a candle flame to find hidden air blocks, and which one window you must keep closed even if it is in the shade. I remember back in the early 50s, my brother Abraham was already fascinated by the way a house breathes. He was just a young lad then, sitting on the threshold of the summer kitchen while our mother Sarah was grating a bar of Fell's naphtha for the laundry. It was a sweltering July day, the kind where the humidity makes your shirt stick to your spine. Abraham noticed that if he unlatched the heavy wooden door to the stone cellar just a thumb's width, the light yellow soap shavings would suddenly skitter across the floorboards towards the stovepipe. He watched them move with a quiet intensity, seeing a physical force the rest of us ignored. He didn't have the book learning for it then, but he was witnessing the weight of the air in motion. What he saw is what building engineers now call thermal siphoning. We often think of the air inside our rooms as empty space, but it has a physical weight and behaves much like water in a tank. Cool air is denser and heavier, while warm air is lighter and possesses more buoyancy. If your house is full of sun-soaked air, it stays trapped like a cork in a bottle. It will not move unless it has a clear exit at a high point and a source of heavier, denser air to push it from below. University extension services point out that the timber and plaster in your ceilings act as a heat battery, holding on to the afternoon's warmth long after the sun has dipped below the tree line. To break that cycle, the evidence shows that a single high-point exhaust, like a small window at the peak of a gable, paired with one low, cool entry point, can move more volume than 10 sashes opened halfway on the same floor. We are looking for a temperature gradient of at least 3 degrees. If we can find air that is even slightly cooler on the darkened side of the building, we can use its natural weight to shove that stored heat right out through the roof. To make this work, you have to picture your home as a tall, hollow chimney. On a hot day, the air at the ceiling is the warmest and is under a tiny amount of pressure, looking for an escape. If you open a window on the side where the sun is beating down, that outdoor air is also hot and light. It won't push its way in to help you. Instead, it just hangs there. Or the sun-warmed wooden frame heats the air further, causing it to expand right into your parlor. You end up with two masses of hot air just resting against each other. This method serves you best if you have a home with at least two levels, a deep cellar or high ceilings with windows near the roofline. If you live in a modern single-story house with a flat roof and no shade, your results will be more modest, but we can still find a way by looking for the leeward side, the side shielded from the direct push of the sun. However, when it is 95 degrees and muggy on every side of the building, the air is too heavy and uniform for this siphon to start. In those conditions, you are better off keeping the house sealed tight. You won't need to buy anything fancy to see if your house is breathing. I keep a spool of thread and a roll of paper tape handy. Some folks find it helpful to use a beeswax candle or a bit of smoking incense to find dead spots where the air is just swirling in a circle instead of moving toward the exit. You will also want a simple thermometer you can carry from room to room. Checking the temperature difference between the floor of your porch and the ceiling of your upstairs hallway tells you exactly how much pull you have to work with. We are looking for three specific things: the lowest cool entry, the highest exit, and the clear channel between them. The entry is usually a north-facing window or one tucked under a wide porch where the sun never reaches the dirt. For the exit, I prefer a window on the top floor that is actually on the sunny side. It sounds backwards, but the heat hitting that side of the roof helps warm the air right inside the glass, making it even more buoyant and eager to climb out. This creates a vacuum that pulls the heavier air from the ground floor up through the heart of the house. I start the day long before the heat becomes a burden. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I make a steady circuit of the house to close every latch and pull the heavy fabric shades on the eastern and southern walls. We are trying to bottle the night's leftover coolness like a summer preserve. If you leave your casements open through the late morning, the sun will spend those hours heating up your floorboards and the heavy oak of your cupboards. Once that wood is soaked with heat, it is very hard to convince it to let go later in the day. When mid-afternoon arrives and the air inside starts to feel sluggish, I head to the highest point in the house. I use a sturdy wooden stool to reach the top sash of that gable window. I do not slide it all the way down. I only open it about 4 inches from the top. A smaller, higher opening helps the air move with more purpose than a wide-open gap. It creates a focused exit point for that pressurized warm air that has been gathering against the ceiling, giving it a doorway to climb out. Next, I go back downstairs to the north side, where the maple shadows are longest and the grass still feels a bit damp. I find the window where the wood of the sill still feels cool to the back of my hand. I slide this bottom sash up. I take a fresh piece of thread and tape it to the frame as I did before. At first, the thread might just dither or hang limp. This is because the air hasn't found its direction yet. It is waiting for us to clear a way through the middle of the house. This is where many folks lose their way. I go through the house and close the doors to any rooms we aren't using, like the spare bedroom or the pantry. If you leave every door standing wide, The moving air will spill into those side spaces, swirling around and losing its momentum. You want to build a tight, invisible tunnel that leads from that cool north window, through the main hallway, and straight to the stairs. It is about keeping the air moving in one direction so it doesn't have a chance to sit still and warm up. I also check the cellar door. If you have a stone-lined basement, that is your greatest reservoir of heavy air. I unlatch that door and prop it open just 2 inches, about the width of 3 fingers. You will often feel a distinct tug on the door as the house begins to siphon that cellar air upward. This acts as an extra boost, pushing the lighter, warmer air toward the roof with even more vigor. If you have a room that still feels like a pocket of stagnant heat, do not open its window wide. Instead, just crack the top sash 1 single inch. This allows that trapped heat to join the main stream heading for the exit without letting in enough outside air to spoil the pressure. Whatever you do, keep your sunny side windows sealed tight. Opening them even a crack is like poking a hole in the side of a drinking straw. It breaks the suction, and you'll find that the cool air from the shaded side stops flowing entirely. I usually give the house about 15 minutes to settle into this rhythm. You will feel a change not just in the temperature, but in the very weight of the atmosphere against your skin. While you wait, check that your window screens are seated firmly in their tracks so no one leans against them and falls, and make sure any low entry windows have a wooden dowel cut to fit the track. This keeps the sash from being lifted further from the outside, so you can have your breeze and your peace of mind at the same time. Even with a good flow established, there are days when the old ways have to sit alongside modern reality. If you live in a valley where the evening humidity settles like a damp quilt, this method will bring that moisture right into your parlor. While the moving air feels kind on your skin, it can make the linen on your bed feel a bit tacky or heavy by the time you turn in. You have to decide for yourself if the relief of the movement is worth the dampness. I have found that if the humidity is high enough to make the salt clumpy in the shaker, I might wait until much later in the evening to open the cool entry once the sun has completely gone and the air begins to dry out. Safety is something we cannot overlook when we are managing the house this way. When you use those low ground floor windows as your source of air, you must ensure your screens are tight and free of holes. You don't want to invite the 4-legged or 6-legged neighbors inside for a visit. If you plan to leave the windows open after dusk, it is wise to have a wooden dowel or a sturdy stick cut to the exact length of the window track. I place it right in the groove so the sash cannot be lifted any further from the outside. This gives you the ventilation you need without worrying about the latch. When you are reaching for those high exit points, always make sure your stool or ladder is on a level floor and never lean out too far. A fall from an upper story is a high price to pay for a cool room. We must also be realistic about what a house can do once it is already heat-soaked. If you wait until the walls and the heavy floorboards have been baking in the sun all day, they will behave like the bricks of a wood stove, radiating warmth long after you start the siphon. Moving the air will help, but it takes hours to pull the heat out of the actual bones of the house. This is why I stress starting the process in the early afternoon before the structure reaches its peak temperature. If you find the movement feels a bit sluggish, You might be tempted to put a fan in that north window to blow air inside. In my experience, that often creates a tumble of air that fights the natural flow. It is much more effective to place a fan in your highest exit window, facing outward. This helps the house exhale and speeds up the siphon without breaking the pressure seal. There comes a point in the evening when you will notice the thread on the upper window begins to lean into the house instead of pushing out. This tells you the world outside has finally become cooler than the air inside. At that moment, the natural siphon has reversed itself. However, if the heat outside ever climbs past 100 degrees, these methods must yield. At that point, passive movement can become a risk to your health rather than a comfort, and you should prioritize staying hydrated or seeking a mechanical cooling source. Until that thermometer outside reads lower than the one on your hallway wall, you stay disciplined with your entry and exit. It is a slow conversation between the house and the shadows, and it requires a bit of patience to let the air find its own weight. After letting this natural siphon run for an hour, I take my thermometer back to the upstairs hallway where that thread is still fluttering. The mercury has dipped from 84 down to 79. While 5 degrees might look small on a ledger, the constant motion of the air changes the entire character of the house. It is the difference between a restless, sweat-stained afternoon and a quiet one. That heavy, pressing weight is gone, replaced by a current that pulls the heat right off your skin. You can feel the coolness of the cellar or the shaded grass moving past your ankles. There is a particular kind of peace that returns to a home when you aren't relying on the constant hum and vibration of a motor. You start to hear the world again. You hear the long, low rustle of the maples providing your cooling source. And you might even hear the birds in the kitchen garden. My brother viewed a building not as a box to be forced into comfort, but as a vessel meant to work with the creation around it. We aren't trying to master the weather, but we can be wise stewards of the shade. I would be interested to hear about your own pathway. If you try the thread test, let me know where you found your best entry. Was it a basement hatch that smells of cold stone, or a narrow window tucked behind a lilac bush? Every home has its own lungs, and it takes a bit of patience to find the right channel through the rooms. If this way of working serves you well, we have another story about how my brother manages moisture. He uses the thickness of masonry to keep his tools from rusting during the spring. Stay frugal, stay free.